You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Welcome back to Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. I'm Andy Matusi. With me, as always, is my brother Brian. Although, if you're watching, you cannot see him right now as he has his camera off because he is in the process of packing up his house for a move. Brian, what's going on, man?
Yeah, this place is kind of crazy right now. My backdrop that I usually have behind me is actually in a storage locker right now. So right now, if my camera was on, you would see part of my kitchen, part of my hallway, and me without a shirt, all things you probably don't want to see. So, yeah.
Especially the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, yes, we have Western Conference preview for you guys today. It's going to be kind of crazy the next few weeks for us doing this show, as I am in the process of moving, as I mentioned before. So we're going to try and make it as consistent as we can. Next week's episode will be in person. I will be staying with Andrew and his wife for the weekend. So we'll be there. We'll be able to do the show in person, which will be kind of neat. And that'll be our Eastern Conference preview show. But in the weeks following, it's going to kind of be playing it by ear and seeing how things go with my move, selling my house, and all that. So we'll just kind of have to see how it goes, but we'll keep you guys posted on social media. So it'll be very important, if you care that much, that you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. And so we'll talk about my move later on once I'm actually done moving, because it's a whole big thing. But for now, we got 16 teams we got to get set up for this season. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go best to worst in the conference. And that would make us start off with the Dallas Stars last season. Record of 52 wins, 21 losses, and 9 overtime and shootout losses. 113 points. That was good for, again, best in the Western Conference and second place in the entire league. It's been more the same for Dallas the last few years. They're very clearly one of the best built teams in the league. They have a lot of power up front. They shut it down really well on defense, and if they can't, Jake Ottinger is usually there to bail them out. By Jake Ottinger standards, probably not the best season he could have hoped for last year, but he kind of got it together towards the end. And again, it took the Stars all the way to Game 7 of the Western Conference Final. So now Dallas moves forward. No Joe Pavelski. He's gone to retirement. No more Ryan Suter. They bring in a couple names to kind of try and fill out the defense. Matt Dumba comes over after playing a year in Arizona. Ilya Lyubushkin comes back over after spending last year in Anaheim and then Toronto. And I believe Brendan Smith as well comes in. And so for Dallas, definitely not the same threats that they probably could have had on defense like they did last year, but their big three on defense are Heiskanen, Lindell, and Thomas Harley. And they just re-signed Lindell for, I believe, the next 4 seasons, $5 million per year, or no, it's 3 seasons, I believe. I don't know. I think I got my Puckpedia is up right now. My screen's all glitching out, so I can't actually see the end of this deal. I want to say it's the next 4 or 5 seasons. I swear to God, I saw it was 5 when he signed it. Here we go. Yeah, UFA is 2030, so he's for the next 5 years. And then they get Thomas Harley on a 2-year, $4 million per year deal. And again, he's an RFA, so just a short-term deal that'll probably bridge him into a nice long 8-year contract at the end of this. But that's where Dallas is at right now. You know, they lose Pavelski to retirement, which I think they're going to feel the effects of. And they're going to have to do some tinkering on defense. They really relied on those top 3 guys plus Ryan Suter and a little bit of Chris Tanev last year, and it just didn't work out for them. So I think for Dallas, the important thing going forward here for them, as they have quite a few players up front on expiring deals at the end of this year. I think this is really the year you need to go all in, and I'm interested to see how they handle this.
I'm interested to see where it goes to. Like you said, losing Joe Pavelski in the offseason is a big deal, not just for the team, but for the league as a whole. That just sucks to see a player of that magnitude go. I think goaltending wise, how should I word this? Well, I was impressed with Ottinger throughout the entirety of the playoffs. So I think what it's really going to come down to Dallas is what they're going to do on their back end as far as defensemen go. I think a lot of that's going to I can't find the words right now. I'm having a massive brain fog right now. I think it's really going to come down to players staying healthy. And God, I'm really mad. I lost that train of thought, but I think it's really going to come down to players staying healthy for them. And I don't know. I don't foresee a deep playoff run for them this year. I know it's already only the beginning of the season, but I don't think we're going to see the same team that we saw last year.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see a little bit of regression. I mean, in Dallas's case, again, they have a lot of players expiring. Jamie Benn's going to need a new contract. Now, the good thing for Dallas is probably going to be a significant drop off in salary by the end of the season. Jamie Benn will be 36. He's making $9.5 million against the cap now. He's not going to be making that on his next deal if he's playing in Dallas. I can tell you that right now. Matt Duchene's expiring. Evgeny Dadonov expiring. Sam Steele, he's expiring. But the big one for them is going to be Wyatt Johnston, who's expiring. He's going to be due for a pretty big pay raise unless they want to bridge him to get him potentially more money as the cap continues to go up. But I would expect a huge raise for Wyatt Johnston right now, who's only making $894,000 against the cap and is going to be due for a substantial raise given the performances he's put on. Especially, he really had kind of a coming out party in the playoffs this year. He really is shown in his youth that he's going to be an excellent player for a long time to come. So I think a lot of the money they save on Jamie Benn's next deal will go right back into Wyatt Johnston's deal. But again, for Dallas, the thing that killed them last year was leaning really on three guys in the playoffs. And then Tanev gets injured. And so you're really down to three guys and the corpse of Ryan Suter, who's just not the defenseman he once used to be. So I'm sure they can probably get a little bit more out of Matt Dumba. They're a really well-coached team. And for a guy who's as good, a guy who's as potentially good on defense as Dumba can be, I know he can be. I've seen him do it plenty of times. I think there's maybe some hope there, but again, that series against Edmonton really ran them thin. And I think you're right when you say there may be a little regression here, because it just doesn't look like, as good as they still are, it doesn't look like they're as dangerous. I wouldn't be as scared of playing them in the playoffs as I might have been a year or two ago.
Right. And I still want to point out that they're still a good team. That's not at all was I saying that they suck now, by no means. It's just, you're not going to get the same performance out of this team as a whole that you got last year. And like you said, I mean, Johnston shows that he's going to be a good player going forward. I mean, assuming everything works out, he stays healthy, all that jazz. But like you said, Ryan Suter's not the defenseman he used to be.
He's not on the team anymore. He's on the Blues.
What? Where did I miss that?
He signed with the Blues, and I think he signed on July 1st.
No.
Yeah. He's been with the Blues. That was one of the. I'll look up the contract. Also, we completely buried the lead on this. Jake Ottinger's deal expires at the end of this year, and he's only making $4 million. You can bet your sweet ass that he's going to be getting a raise, especially because he's an RFA at the end of this year. But then next year he'd qualify to be a UFA. July 10th, Ryan Suter signed with the Blues. It was the day after our last show, I want to say, or a couple days after our last show of last season.
Well, I gotta apologize to everybody. At no point did I ever see that this offseason. So
yeah,
whoops.
Boy, you would have been really. I should have just not said anything.
You should just let me keep going, man.
Yeah, stay on when we get to the Blues and talk about him. Then you'd been like, wait, what just happened? But
that's even better then.
I want to move real quick to Jake Ottinger before we move on to the next team. Listen, the Stars are going to have to open up the pocketbook here, and that's the bottom line. Realistically, I assume they're going to want to extend him for 8 years. That means you're buying 7 UFA years from this guy. This contract for Jake Ottinger is probably going to start with a 10. I just don't see a world where it doesn't. There's just no two ways around that. Jake Ottinger is going to be making a shitload of money after this year. So if the Stars want to try and cash him one last time, they're going to have to spend big at the deadline and bolster that defense.
Yeah, I mean, that's when we'll really have a good idea of what the hell's going on with them and see either how right we were or how horrendously wrong we were. So we'll see. I think Ottinger is the future for them. So, I mean, barring an absolute collapse. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I just loathe Dallas. So I don't want to sit here and commend them too much.
All right, let's see. So we're gonna move on. We got a couple Canadian teams we got to talk about. Next up on our list is the Winnipeg Jets. So Winnipeg kind of crashed and burned to end last season. The record on the season: 52 wins, tied with Dallas for most wins in the conference, and tied with the Panthers and the Hurricanes as well for most wins in the league, or for second most wins in the league. But that was only behind the Rangers. It kind of fell apart for the Jets in the playoffs. They go out and win game one of their series against Colorado, an absolute 7-6 barn burner that everybody who watched it will probably remember for a long time. It was a great game to watch. But then it blows up in their face. At least 5 goals against in the 4 games that followed. They get gentlemen swept out of the playoffs, and now they're kind of left to pick up the pieces. A lot of people, and myself, and I had the Jets go into the final last year, and so a lot of people, myself included, it's like, now, okay, where do you go from here now? I mean, you still have Connor Hellebuck and you got Mark Scheifele on these long-term deals. You still have a really good group of players here. They still have Kyle Connor. They still have Nino Niederreiter, Nikolai Ehlers, Alex Iafallo, and Gabe Vilardi. They still have Vlad Nemestikov and Mason Appleton, who are good depth pieces as well. The big looming question for them up front is if they can get Cole Perfetti signed before the season starts. Because that's going to be a huge one for him. They're looking for him to break out, but he can't have a breakout season if he's not playing. So right now for the Jets, the big question for them is getting Cole Perfetti signed up front. On the back end, I'm not overly blown away, but again, their goalie, like Dallas, they have a really good goalie in Connor Hellebuck. So even though they really kind of lean on 3 defensemen, and now that they have Colin Miller, maybe a 4th guy, but you know, I really think Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk and Dylan DeMello are going to be looking at a bulk of the work here. And again, with Colin Miller, I think that'll help a little bit. But again, you lose. They just lost Vinny Hinola to an injury. He's got an infection in his ankle, so I don't know what the timeline for return is for him. But the Jets are kind of in a similar situation where they're probably a hair worse than they were last year, but they're loaded up front and they have a great goalie. And so their success this season is really going to depend on how they add at the deadline and if they can really thicken up that defense core.
Well, the other thing I want to point out is, do you get the same performance out of Connor Hellebuck this year? I mean, he's coming off, got just an absolute unreal season last year. We're not going to talk about playoffs. We all know they shit the bed in the playoffs.
That's a team effort.
Yeah, I say that's a team effort. And like we say, you never base playoffs off of the regular season, vice versa. It's just 2 different animals. But do you get the same performance out of Connor Hellebuck this year? And I think that's going to be a major factor. And I do want to point out, he's been playing great the last couple seasons. It's not like this was new for him last season. But does he stay on track, or did we see a complete turnaround with him? That's what I'm interested to see moving forward.
Fair enough. I think Connor Hellebuck's performance is no issue.
I hope not. I hope not.
I mean, he's in the prime of his career. I don't know. I really am having a hard time seeing a world where he takes a step back. But you never know. I mean, anything can happen. I mean, Tim Thomas had 2 killer years with the Bruins, and then he was useless pretty much the entirety of the rest of his career. So
I think a lot of that has to do with team chemistry, though, too. I think that goes a lot further than people actually realize. So, and
with a new coach, and again, Rick Bowness, great coach. Hopefully he's enjoying retirement. They're going to be under a new system in Scott Arniel, and while I think they'll still be very good, I'm sure there will be some growing pains for the Jets. So, I mean, judging them right out of the gate may not be the best course of action. It will take time for this team to kind of re-gel itself and find their game under a new coach. But if there's, for me, the one thing that I feel is almost a guarantee is that Connor Hellebuck, if he's healthy, is going to have another great season.
And I mean, that's what I'm expecting. I don't want to say that I'm expecting him to take a turn for the worse. I'm just saying, just do things stay consistent. And that's consistency is key. I guess that's the best way to put it, not just for him, but for the team as a whole. So also, did you say it was Nikolai Ehlers that has a long contract too with him?
No, Mark Scheifele. Nikolai Ehlers
Scheifele, yeah,
Nikolai Ehlers is expiring at the end of the season. And he's making
okay.
$6 million against the cap. So they need to find a deal for Cole Perfetti, but they need to make sure that they leave enough room because Nikolai Ehlers is going to get a big payday. He's going to turn 28, and this is going to be his big money contract. He's an excellent player. He's extremely fast. He plays power play. This is a guy that is going to make a shitload of money. Alex Iafallo and Gabe Vilardi are both expiring at the end of this year. Iafallo turns 30. He's going to be a UFA. Vilardi, who is probably the better of those two players, is going to be an RFA, and he's only making $3.5 million. So they're in a situation where, like the Stars, they're going to have to spend some big money here. Now, unlike the Stars, their goalie is already paid a very handsome amount. But again, they have two star players for sure that are going to be getting or needing raises here. Plus, again, they still have to sign Cole Perfetti. They still have not. And so we'll see how they manage this. But I think for this season, like Dallas, if Winnipeg can add on defense, I really think they could be a team that under a new coaching scheme could really make a deep run in the playoffs this year, assuming health is not an object.
That was going to be my question for you. So overall, looking and extreme guesstimates, where do you see Winnipeg at the end of the season? But you just answered it.
I think they're still going to be one of the top three teams in this division. I probably put them at 2. If I had to do like a placing for the Central Division, I'm probably taking them at 2nd, maybe 3rd. I don't think they're going to win the division. We'll get to the team that I think is going to win the division in a little bit. But yeah, I think Dallas and Winnipeg both kind of in the same boat, probably going to see a little regression this year. By no means does that mean I think they're going to have bad seasons. They're still really amazing, well put together teams. So I don't think that'll be an issue, but time will tell. Let's see who's next on our list here. We have the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So the Canucks had a really good season last year. A fantastic season, I thought, under Tocchet. 50 wins, 23 losses, 9 overtime and shootout losses, good for 109 points. Again, that's 3rd in the Western Conference. The playoffs kind of blew up in their face. You lose Demko to an injury. You go to Game 7 of the second round. Brock Besser is not able to play because of blood clotting issues. Demko, it's still kind of up in the air if he's going to be able to, when he's going to be ready. But I think they're kind of stacking some of their chips up for Archer Silovs and seeing how that's going to go. I thought he looked pretty good in the playoffs last year, given the situation he was dropped into, but it doesn't always translate into being a good goalie long-term. I mean, Akira Schmid had a really good playoff run for the Devils a couple of years ago, and then last season starts and he's useless. So it's not always a guarantee, but if the Canucks can get Demko back, that's going to be the biggest thing for them is his health, because as far as roster construction, the Canucks are one of my favorite rosters in the league. I really like the way the team's put together. I really think they're not I don't think they have any super standout players. And you look at a team like Dallas, who's got Jason Robertson, or Edmonton's got Connor McDavid, or Penguins have Crosby. To me, other than Quinn Hughes, they don't really have that kind of talent on the front end. I think Elias Pettersson is a really good player. I think Brock Besser is a fantastic player, but they don't have that next generational level of talent, other than I think Quinn Hughes is just an outstanding defenseman. But they're just so well put together. I don't really think it's a roster with too many weaknesses. But again, go into a Game 7, you lose one of your best forwards, and you're missing your star goalie. That hurts. I mean, it's going to take a toll on your team. And I think for Vancouver, if they can stay healthy this year, I think this is a team that's going to really give Edmonton a run for its money, because those two had a hell of a playoff series this past season. And I really think we're potentially looking at kind of a same situation this year. I think those two are going to be gunning for 1 and 2 in the division. And I would not be shocked if we see them playing each other again in round 2 this year.
Man, you said all of that beautifully. There's one thing you said that I want to kind of put an emphasis on, maybe not emphasize, but kind of pick apart. And that was, they don't have that next generational talent. And I just want to point out that while that is a huge factor for any team, at the same time, it doesn't always matter when you look back on teams like the 2017-2018 Vegas Golden Knights, who had
nobody except Marc-Andre Fleury.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they had one of the most elite goaltenders of all time. However, all the guys on that team were just regular ass guys. and look what they did. So,
Yeah.
I mean, just
And
because
this
you don't
Canucks
have
team
that-
is better than that Golden Knights team for sure. Like they,
Oh,
they have
100%.
elite level skill. I mean, Besser, Miller, Pedersen, even you can throw Jake DeBrusk in that mix. It's weird to see him on Vancouver now.
Yeah.
I like some of their depth. Dan and Heinen, Teddy Bluger. I think Kiefer Sherwood, who's just came over from Nashville, is going to have a really good season with them.
I'm really interested as a Bruins fan to see how Jake DeBrusk does over on Vancouver right now. It was talked about so much in his career so far that the Bruins were going to trade him. Like almost every season after, I think it was like his second season, they're like, they need to trade him. He wants out of Boston. He's out of Boston. I want to see what happens with him. I want to see both for Vancouver and for Boston. I want to see, was Boston the problem for Jake DeBrusk, or was Jake DeBrusk the problem for Jake DeBrusk? And being in Vancouver now is going to tell. I'm interested to see where he goes. I want to point out I wish him nothing but the best, but I'm very intrigued as to how this is going to go for him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Another side note too, and I definitely don't want to forget to mention this. Dakota Joshua will miss the foreseeable future for the Canucks as he's recovering from testicular cancer treatment. So obviously, we all fucking hate cancer. It's just the worst fucking disease on the planet. So thankfully, Dakota was able to it was caught earlier. It was treatable. So it's assuming everything continues to track well for him. It looks like he will recover from this, but his timeline for return isn't what's important right now. It's just important that he gets better. And once he comes back for them, we know he's a great player. And so that would be really good for the Canucks to bolster their roster. But again, right now his health is the most important thing. And speaking of health, I also want to again reiterate with Thatcher Demko, it is vital to this team's life that they get him back.
Absolutely.
Lankinen comes over from Nashville, had a pretty good season last year and net behind UC Saros. They still have Shelovs as well, who had a great little run there in the playoffs, but can that be sustained? Demko is a good goalie. You need your star goalie back. And
100%.
for them, for the Canucks as well, they have Hughes and Hronek on their top D pair, and that's one of the better pairs in the league, but they're really going to want Carson Soucy to have a really good year this year. I don't know how much Tyler Myers has left in the tank, but again, it's another player where you absolutely are going to need his best. This team is constructed pretty well, I believe, but for them to have a good playoff run, your depth guys are really going to have to step up because your star guys are going to play well, but they're also going to be going against the other best players in the league. You're going to need your depth to outdo the other team's depth. And so when you start to get lower into the lineup and you get into your lower D pairs, that's where you need that extra gear to be found as well. And so if the Canucks can do that, I don't see a reason they can't go on a nice little run this year, but I would certainly expect to see them based on the layout of that division and how bad the Sharks and the Ducks are. I would not be surprised to see Vancouver gunning with Edmonton for that number one spot in the division.
There's just one more thing I want to say about Vancouver because I don't want to spend too much more time on them, but I just want to say, as far as Thatcher Demko goes, I saw so many people when the Canucks got eliminated from the playoffs this past season saying how Canucks fans were delusional. They never had a shot. I don't think people realize the Canucks were one healthy Thatcher Demko away from winning the Western Conference. I don't know how people don't see that. I truly think if Demko was healthy, Canucks were going to the Stanley Cup final. That's not what I wanted. That's just what I thought was going to happen. So
I don't think you're incorrect. And we'll get in again. They take the Oilers to 7 without Brock, they play game 7 without Brock Besser. They take the Oilers to 7 without Thatcher Demko. I mean, there's a lot to be said for how well they held up in the playoffs. So I'm with you. Honestly, I thought had Vancouver won that game 7, I think they probably would have taken Dallas down, and I certainly could have seen them in the final. Vancouver, Florida would have been a great final too.
Honestly. Dude, yeah. Not to say that Florida Edmonton wasn't, but yeah, that would have been a hell of a series. And honestly, what I wish we could have seen was an Edmonton Vancouver Western Conference final. Just that would have been a bloodbath. If you think
that would have been fun too. Yeah, just the way the brackets are laid out because of Gary's NHL, will probably never be fortunate enough to get that. But
no, never. But that's all right.
So now I want to move on here, and I want to talk. I mentioned this a bit ago. I want to talk about the team that I think is going to win the Central this year, and that would be the Colorado Avalanche. So the Avs last year, again, just it seems at least for me, since they won the Stanley Cup, man, they have just really had frustrating playoff exits. They go out and lose round one last year to or 2 seasons ago now to Seattle in round one, coming off a cup defense. That's got to be frustrating. Then you come out last year and you win a series that most people didn't pick you to have a chance in against Winnipeg. And then you go out and you have a frustrating loss to Dallas, and Matt Duchene is the one that scores that goal that boots you out of the playoffs. So for the Avs, here's the thing. Probably on paper, top 3 or 4 teams in the league. The thing that's absolutely killing them still is this fucking goaltending situation. I'm going to beat this dead horse.
Oh, man.
Alexander Georgiev's not their goalie. But if you look at them at forwards and on defense, there's probably not a better team than them in the entire league. You could probably put Edmonton up there with them, but Florida is kind of the same way too, although Florida lost a little bit on defense this offseason. That goaltending's killing them, man. They are an elite goalie away from being an absolute unstoppable force. And I know Alexander Georgiev had actually a pretty good, after that game 1 against the Jets, he had a pretty good series against the Jets. And then I thought it was pretty good for the most part against Dallas. But man, is this just killing me watching this team. This is a team that after they won in 2022, I was like, these guys are going to win like 3 out of 5. In my head, I'm like, this team is so well put together.
Yeah, but you got to remember when they won that cup, though, they only had Darcy Kemper as their goaltender. Like, even then, their goaltending wasn't phenomenal. It was bad.
They were just outscoring their problems. And the issue with that is that when you win a championship, you start it to get it into your head. Oh, that's a way we can do it every time. Can it work? Sure, it did work. It just doesn't work like that every time. You can't. I mean, you can't score 4 goals a game and expect to. You can't win every game 5-4. We'll put it that way. You just can't do it. It works in the regular season, doesn't work in the playoffs. This is still, like I said, one of the best constructed rosters in the league. They're expecting to get Valeri Nichushkin back in November after his suspension's up. If all goes well, Gabriel Landeskog will be coming off of IR for the first time in a couple of years, which would be really exciting to see him come back. That would absolutely give that lineup a kick in the ass. That would be a lot of fun to see.
Yeah. On
defense, they still have a great top 4: Makar, Taves, Girard, and Josh Manson. Still one of the best decors in the league, if not the best. Again, up front, McKinnon, Rantanen, when they get Landeskog and Nichushkin back, that'd be great. Casey Middlestad is only 25. I still think Casey Middlestad's ceiling is really high, and I'm not just saying that because he's a Minnesota guy. I'm just saying I think there's another gear this kid can find, and he's still so young. Arturi Lekkonen's a great playoff performer for them. I think, again, Drouin will have a chance to play with McKinnon, and he thrived in that role last year. Their depth pieces are great. Miles Wood, Logan O'Connor, Ross Colton's a great player. Chris Wagner's got a year left. They just added Yoel Kiviranta as well. So we'll see what happens for the Avalanche, but there's not too much that I need to say about this team because we already know what they are. They're so well put together. The magic word. You can't keep up with them. They need a fucking goalie. There's just no way about it. You need better performances in the playoffs as a team in general, but this goalie thing, it's got to fucking stop. This is the final year of Alex Georgiev's deal. You can't, if you're a GM of any team, doesn't matter if you're the Avalanche or not, you can't settle when you have a team that's built to win a championship, that's already won a championship. You can't let something as simple as goaltending be the thing that kills you. There are options out there. I mean, Linus Ullmark was available for trade. And now I don't know if Avalanche were on his no trade list or not, but there have been guys out there, and you can find somebody that's better than Alex Georgiev. And I know he goes on runs where he's unstoppable, but then he'll follow it up or precede it with runs that are so bad that he's a sub 900 goalie.
Right.
We'll keep it real simple here, and I know you and I both agree on this. The Avalanche win the Stanley Cup if they find a goalie.
110%. And you can call it beating a dead horse. You can say whatever you want. We've been talking about it since we started the show. The magic word here, everybody say it with me, is goaltending. Always has been. They make a deeper playoff run. Again, Alex Georgiev didn't look terrible this past season in the playoffs. I want to give him credit for that, but he's not the answer for them. He's not. They are, like you said, one good goalie away from making the Stanley Cup final and winning the cup, honestly. So I don't understand where their priorities are right now, because otherwise, dude, on paper, this team is fucking stacked. Like, they're one of the most lethal teams in the league. If you put a goalie in there, game over for everybody else. I don't know what else we can say on this except get a freaking
Get good.
freaking goalie. Yeah. Woo.
No, it's true. And again, I was hoping they couldn't. Again, Justus Annunen could still develop into something great. He could have a breakout season for them. That could solve their goaltending issues. I was hoping Ivan Prosvetov was going to stay with the team. He's since signed in the KHL, I believe. But I was hoping that maybe he was going to get a look with them. He's a huge guy. He's like 6'5". So I was hoping maybe a huge brick wall, and that is the kind of guy Colorado needs. But yeah, we'll leave it at that with the Avalanche. They're an amazing team. They're going to have an awesome season. They're probably going to win the division, but that playoff success is really looming on. Can they get a goalie?
All right. Time will tell. We'll see. My money's on no, but move on.
All right, now we're going to start getting into some fun stuff here too as well. Next up's the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, so close to having what would have been the greatest comeback in probably sports history. Make it to the Stanley Cup final, go down 0-3, come all the way back, force a Game 7, lose Game 7 by only 1 goal. About as close as you can get to winning the Stanley Cup without actually winning it. I know that doesn't make you feel better, Oilers fans, but you do have to take the silver lining of this team is still incredibly skilled. You have 2 of the best players in the world, and this team has shown that it can survive a deep playoff run. I mean, again, they made it all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Similar to Colorado, they're extremely loaded up front. They're as fast as anybody. They're as skilled as anybody. That power play was historically good. I know they kind of had some issues tinkering with the defense a little during the playoff run last year, but a lot of this team, I would say, remains unchanged. I know they lose Holloway and Broberg to offer sheets in St. Louis, but you still have your same goalies who got you to where you were last year. I thought Stuart Skinner really had an incredible couple months last spring to take them to the final, and he got the support from Pickard when he needed it in round 2. And you know what? Look where they ended up in the Stanley Cup final.
I'm excited.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I would say this is the one I've been looking forward to talking about. Obviously, we all know, in addition to being a Brewers fan, I'm a huge Florida Panthers fan. So I'm personally happy with how everything turned out. But yeah, what could have been the greatest comeback in all of sports throughout time. I'm very grateful it didn't happen, but I think a key player, besides Connor McDavid being Jesus on the ice, which we all expected, you really got to give credit to Stuart Skinner here. I'm talking last spring. Just incredible. I think if you're an Edmonton fan, that's your guy. I thought he was incredible, and he looked like an elite goalie in that Florida series after they were down 3-0. He looked, I mean, it helped that Bob wasn't playing at his best, but Skinner looked like he was prime elite goaltender. So I want to give credit there, but I think right now, total speculation, Edmonton is my team to run it back.
I wouldn't be surprised. The whole group is essentially still together. I know losing Holloway and Broberg's not ideal. They lose Vinny Desharnais, which if you ask an Oilers fan, they're gonna tell you that's a good thing. Here's the thing for the Oilers. You have Skinner, who's on a 1-year Jeff Skinner, who's on a 1-year deal. I think getting a chance to play in the playoffs will really rejuvenate him. I think I truly think he's gonna have I don't want to say a breakout season, but I really think he's gonna. I was talking about guys finding another gear. This is a guy who's already a really good player that I think even still has a little more. And I think playing playoff hockey, I would not be surprised to see Jeff Skinner become a great playoff player. So he's only 32. I'm really excited to see what he can do. But the rest of this core is like all under 33 years old. Kane, 33. He's going to be out for a little bit because he had surgery. But Zach Hyman, 32. Draisaitl's 28. The best player on the planet and in the history of this league is only 27. Victor Arvidsson, again, he's going to be a great fit in there. He's a good speed guy. He's going to fit in great. I hope they put him on McDavid's wing. He's going to be really good. Janmark's still there. Corey Perry, it seems like he's the key to getting your team to the final, if you don't mind if you win or not. But Connor Brown, again, if he can play at half of what he was when he was with the Leafs, he's a good depth player. Mike Hoffman, if they end up signing him after his PTO is up, we'll see what happens. But on defense, they still have Nurse, they still have Ekholm, still got Bush, Brett Kulak's still there. They
This
bring
is
in
still a dangerous team.
it's still a very good team. Yeah, this is the final year of Evan Bouchard's contract. He's making 3.9 right now. He will be an RFA at the end of this season. He is due for a monster raise as well. And so for the Oilers, by the way, at the end of next season, Stuart Skinner, who's only making $2.6 million, is up as well, and he'll be a UFA. So that's going to be another guy that's going to get a lot of money. But for the Oilers, the most of the group is still intact. This has got to be the year you run it back. If they're going to win with this group, to me, this has to be the year. Otherwise, it starts to get difficult. I know the cap's going up, so they'll have money to sign Stuart Skinner and re-signed Evan Bouchard. But other teams will also have more money to bring in more talent. So these teams that are already as good or better on paper than the Oilers will have that same opportunity to spend money to bring in even better guys. So for me, I like this year for the Oilers. I like this as their best chance to do it. I'm not saying that they will, but I certainly can see them. I certainly have no issue saying that it wouldn't be a surprise to see them run it back because they're just so good. And now they're battle tested in the playoffs. They've been to the conference finals a few times. They've been to the cup final. They've had some really tough battles against some really outstanding teams, and we know that they can win. So the question is not that. It's a matter of can they stay healthy and can they plug in the right pieces in the right places to get it done this year.
I was to say, honestly, I think if there's a Canadian team that's breaking the curse of the drought, it's going to be Edmonton. I'm sure everybody else has the Leafs.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, just making sure. I think it's Edmonton, and I really think that Game 7 was just a kind of a luck of the draw thing because I didn't really think they played horrible against Florida in Game 7, and it was a close game. So I think Florida, Jesus. I think Edmonton is still the team that everybody needs to keep an eye on, and definitely don't sleep on them this year too. Remember this too. That team is insanely fast. That's the big thing. They are faster than everybody in the league, and I don't care what anybody says to try and counter that. They are the fastest team in the league.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that argument whatsoever. All right, let's move on here. Next up is the Nashville Predators, who I thought were a really fun team to watch last year. I thought they probably exceeded most people's expectations. The first year, you bring in Andrew Brunette, his first year with the club as the coach. But the Preds had one of the best off seasons I've seen in the entire 10, 11 years I've been watching hockey now. They bring in Stamkos, they bring in Marchessault, they bring in Brady Shea. They get probably three of the biggest fish other than like Jake Gensel on day one of free agency. And I mean, this team is just stacked now. They had a pretty good year last year anyways. They exceeded most people's expectations. They finished with a record of 47-30-5. That was good for sixth in the conference, probably higher than where most people had them. But you take that group that was already very good and had it kind of tough against Vancouver, and the series kind of blew up in their face the way they lost a couple of those games. Some of those could have gone either way, but now you bring in a guy that's two guys that are Stanley Cup champions, and Brady Shea, who's one of the best defenders in the league, in my opinion. And so now you look up front, and their top six is Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Nyquist. It depends where they're going to plug in Tommy Novak. I don't know how they're going to do that yet. But again, they have Luke Evangelista, who's still a really outstanding player, and Juuso Parssinen, who I think those two guys are really primed to take another big step. They're both still so young. And Phil Tomasino's back for another year with them as well. So I think Nashville is quietly going to be one of the best teams in the league this year. I don't know if it's going to be enough to put them past the Jets and the Stars, but I would not at all be surprised because, again, these players are all good, but sometimes it doesn't gel right away. Sometimes you get off to a slow start. But I could certainly see these guys finishing past Dallas or Winnipeg if it all clicks together right away. We know that D-Corps good. Yossi, Carrier, Shen, Fabro. Now they bring in, again, Brady Shea and Spencer Stastny, who I think is going to probably spend most of the season up with the big club after spending most of last year down in Milwaukee. And when you got the juice in net, anything's possible. So I think Nashville's going to have a really good season this year.
I think they are too. I do agree with you that they exceeded people's expectations last year. And I honestly, it wasn't looking good for them. And honestly, I think when things started to turn around, and maybe I'm just a little biased here, but I think the game you and I went to against Colorado, I
That
think
was
that's
100% the turning point.
I was going to say that was the turning point. They looked like a different team, and then it was just uphill.
They rattled
from
off
there.
all those wins. Well, and the other thing was the week before we went to Nashville, they had that thing in Vegas where they got their concert canceled because they were playing so piss poor. And after that, they rattled off 18 straight games without a regulation loss or something like that. Yeah. It was like 16-0-2 or something. And one of those overtime losses was that goofy game in Minnesota where the Wild pulled the goalie in OT and got lucky that they scored on the first shot they took.
I just lost. I didn't hear what you said because you cut out a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Andrew's having some internet issues here.
Damn it. It's me.
Yeah, it's always you, buddy. I don't know what to tell you.
I was saying I didn't hear part of what you said because it cut out, but I thought it was you.
Nope, it was you.
All right. Well, I'll just smile.
So all I was saying was that that run Nashville had. I mean, there was really nothing. There was really nothing that could have warned us that an insane run like that was coming. But yeah, they turned it on at the right time. They showed they can click as a team. It really was kind of unfortunate the way things went in the playoffs for them. They easily could have won that series, but again, kind of the weird ass endings to those games at the end of the series cost them. But again, now they're so much better. They got another year under this under their coach now. I think Saros again is still one of the best goalies in the league, and so you add all this elite talent, including guys that have won Stanley Cups. I'm not at all going to be surprised to see if Nashville's in the top 3 in this division.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think we're in for a real treat, and they're going to be an absolute lethality this season. So I'm not even sure if that's a word, but it sounded good. So
lethality is a word. I don't know if you used it right, but the big thing for the Preds is the end of this season. Nyquist will be a UFA. I assume he'll probably walk unless they can get him dirt cheap. But then they'll have RFAs, Phil Tomasino, Luke Evangelista, and Juuso Parssinen. Like I said, especially Evangelista, I'm looking for 3 big seasons from those guys. They're all 23 or younger. And so they're going to be due for some pretty sizable pay raises here. And I don't see why Nashville can't make something work here. You may lose one of these guys, but again, this group could be dangerous for the next 3-4 years. This could be one of the best teams in the league. I'm certainly not looking forward to having the Wild having to play them 4 or 5 times a season.
Can I say one thing about Nashville? And maybe everybody on the planet disagrees with me. I don't think this is that hot of a take, though. I don't personally think Andrew Brunette is the future as far as coaching goes for Nashville or any team, really. I just don't think he's it. I wasn't super blown away with his performance in Florida, and granted that Florida did win a lot of games, but most of them were come from behind wins, and I'm sorry, that's just not how you have success as a hockey team. So
that's like the 2015 Flames. They had all those comeback wins to get into the playoffs. That was Johnny Gaudreau's first year. Yeah, and I think Bob Hartley might have been the coach there. I don't think that was Glenn Gulletson yet. But again, that entire season they were the comeback kids. They kept coming back, and they get into the playoffs, and they just get it. They beat Vancouver in round 1, which was hilarious, yes, but then they just get clobbered after that and by Anaheim.
Now, I will say, additionally, I do believe that with the roster they have in Nashville right now, that the team could very well be good enough to coach themselves in a sense. I'm not saying they're actually going to coach themselves. I'm just using that metaphorically.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think they're good. I think it's gonna be a great season if you're a Nashville fan, and even if you're not a Nashville fan, it's still a team you need to keep an eye on.
All right, so let's move on here. And yes, I agree. Nashville, it'll be a fun team to keep an eye on. I'm expecting big things out of them. Moving on, the LA Kings finished last season 44-27-11, and once again get bounced in round 1 to the Edmonton Oilers. If you're a Kings fan, this shit's got to be getting pretty old now. I genuinely don't believe the Kings did anything this offseason that made them any better. Darcy Kemper in goal, Stanley Cup champion, but sub 900 Stanley Cup champion. Their goalies it's not a great group. Their defense core is pretty good. I like Gavrikov. Obviously, Doughty's great. Mikey Anderson's pretty good. I actually like Jordan Spence a little bit too. He's a pretty good player. We'll see how he develops as a player long term. Joel Edmondson won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis. But
And I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to point out they did manage to get rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois.
yes, that was going to be the next words out of my mouth. Was the one thing they did do was they shedded that god awful Pierre-Luc Dubois contract. I can't believe Washington picked that up, but so they did get a goalie who probably puts them in a slightly better spot, and they do lose the locker room cancer. So I guess you could say they did do some things to make themselves better, but I think a lot of their success this year is going to hinge on Quentin Byfield continuing to improve. And I thought last season was a great step in the right direction. But a lot of their best players are in their late 20s, creeping up on 30, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But Anze Kopitar's 37. He's not getting any younger. And so they're looking for a lot of these younger guys to really step up for them. I mean, again, they didn't really add any free agents. They didn't have a ton of room to do so. They currently show 1.2 million in projected cap space. I don't see anybody on long-term injured reserve for them. Holy shit, they're still paying Mike Richards. God, that's awful.
What?
Yeah, they're paying Mike Richards until 2028. Wow, that was a really bad buyout.
Yikes.
Holy cow. So Mike Richards is 39. Wow, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, they're only paying him $700,000, but I can't believe they're still paying. I haven't even thought of his name in probably since they won the Stanley Cup last time.
I was going to say, it's been a hot minute.
And they bought out, they retained on Ivan Provorov, which I don't even remember him being in LA. That might have been a 3-way deal to retain some of the salary. I don't remember that. But again, LA, a lot of their success is going to hinge on if their younger guys can step up. They have a lot of good developed players already. Kevin Fiala is an outstanding player. Philippe Deneau is a great 2-way center. Adrian Kempe and Trevor Moore are great players. Getting Warren Fogle out of Edmonton, that is a good piece there. The Oilers will miss him, but again, the Oilers get Victor Arvidsson, who's I think is going to gel really well if they pair him with McDavid. Those are two guys that can haul ass, and McDavid needs guys that can keep up with him, plus Zach Hyman. So, yeah, I think for the Kings, a lot of their success looms over how well can they continue to grow as a team, because they really didn't add much. I mean, again, Warren Fogel's a good player. They get rid of that god awful Dubois contract, which I still don't understand how they pulled that out, but they didn't do much to improve. And my fear for the Kings is that they kind of get into a lull here where they're going to be a middle of the pack team, sneak into the playoffs every year and go out in round one. And that doesn't bode well for long-term success. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe Quentin Byfield goes out and has a 50 goals, 70 assist season and blows everybody's socks off. I don't know, but it doesn't, none of the pieces here to me indicate that this team is going to be due for a breakout season.
I'm with you 100%. I would say I don't think you're far off at all. I'll tell you why they were able to get rid of the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract. That's just because Washington was looking for somebody to feed Ovi passes so he can break the record, without realizing that he's going to absolutely tank their locker room chemistry, because that guy sucks. So yeah, that's why they were able to get rid of him.
I still can't believe Washington made that deal, but hey, you know what, they did. So that's
whatever. It worked out for LA in the long run. I think that's a big thing right there, was getting rid of that.
Yeah, if I think you're right. If there is one thing that LA can take away from this, even if they have a terrible season this year,
at least you don't have that asshole on your team.
Well, I don't know if I'd phrase it quite that way, although you're probably not far off. But even if the team doesn't take another step, you're not buried underneath that contract. You have room to tinker with things and move guys around if you have to. And so it's not the end of the world in LA. I mean, there could still be a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just a little apprehensive, and rightfully so, I think.
I don't blame you. I'm not saying, yep, this is it, we're good to go. I say remain cautiously optimistic and just see where the season takes you.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to look at that. All right, so the final team in the West that made the playoffs this past season was the Vegas Golden Knights, the Kings of LTIR. God, they're currently looks like they're gonna have to use LTIR. According to Puckpedia, they are $3.6 million over the salary cap right now. So that's either gonna mean somebody's going to LTIR or somebody's getting traded. And if we know Vegas as well as we do,
it's gonna be LTIR.
It's gonna be LTIR. So Vegas last season probably not at all the way they wanted that season. And again, like we talked about with Colorado, they come off their cup defense and lose in round 1. Now, in Vegas's case here, they go out and lose to Dallas, who, again, one of the best teams in the league. There's no shame in losing to an insanely good opponent like that. But I think if you ask 99% of the people affiliated with that organization, they felt they probably should have won that series. And they still have plenty of good pieces here to do that. Roster management's going to be a big thing for them, though. I mean, they have... Again, they not only do they not have any cap space, they're almost $4 million above the cap ceiling right now. So even if they manipulate the LTIR to get themselves back under the cap, that's going to mean you're losing a good player for a significant period of time. And I know they're working with Robin Lehner right now to take care of his contract. I don't know what that's going to mean going forward for them. But right now, Robin Lehner's already on LTIR, and they're still 3.6 over the cap. So I mean, you're going to have to lose one of these big deals. You're either going to have to trade somebody or put someone on LTIR. But the only guys right now that are making more than $3.6 million for them on the front, up front, it's Jack Eichel, who's not going. Thomas Hertl, who's not going. William Karlsson's not going. Ivan Barbashev's not going. Mark Stone, maybe. But do you really want to put your captain on LTIR again? Petrangelo's not going to go with making all that money, and he's one of their best defenders. Theodore's not going. Hannafin's not going. So you start to wonder if there's a trade in the works or if there really I mean, now granted, somebody could actually get hurt. That's not out of the realm of possibility. Somebody could go tear something, break something. You never know. And then that alleviates that problem. But you don't want to count on that because you don't want anyone to get hurt. And B, I don't know. I think Vegas is very well built. They still have their Stanley Cup winning goalie. They're still one of the most filled out rosters in the league, largely because of how they dance around the salary cap. But again, how do you get back under the cap to be compliant to start this season? That's the thing. If you lose any of these guys to put them on LTIR, that's a significant loss on this lineup. And even if you trade him, the guy you get back, even if he's making, even if the money difference is enough to get you under the cap, you're not getting, like, let's say you trade Thomas Hertl. I don't know why you would trade him after he just extended there, I'm pretty sure. Or Ivan Barbashev. But whoever you're getting back is not as good as them. You're likely getting prospects, and it's a crapshoot at that point. So for Vegas, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is here. This team's good enough to win a Stanley Cup. That's very obvious already. How do they get cap compliant to start this season? That's my question.
Well, but my thing was kind of, I mean, everybody on that team is too important to the performance of the team. So who do you trade at that point? And when you do trade, like you said, what are you getting back? Prospects, draft picks? Like, what's it? What are you getting for it right now?
Well, and that's the thing. I'm like, even last season when Mark Stone went on IR with his lacerated spleen, I think he had, that they felt the effects of that. The Vegas kind of stumbled into the playoffs last year. They really didn't finish. I didn't think they had a great finish to the season. And again, losing your captain will have that effect. But that goes to show exactly what we're saying is that if you trade one of these guys, or one of them goes to LTI or whatever it is, okay, fine, you're cap compliant, but now you're significantly worse and you screw up the chemistry within your lineup, and that's not good for anybody. So I know Vegas can win the Stanley Cup. I think most people know Vegas can win the Stanley Cup. They've already done it. How do you get yourself in a position where you can set this team up to do it again? Because the D-core is all still there that they won the cup with. Except Alec Martinez, but yeah. Not saying he's a bad defender, but they can do this without him. They still have Theodore. They still have McNabb. And they have Hannafin now, who is a better replacement for Martinez, I think. And they still have Pietrangelo and White Cloud. And Nick Hague, too. I forgot they had Nick Hague.
I say my whole thing is here, as much as they get dragged for using LTIR to their advantage, I kind of feel like that's why this loophole is there. Because they're trying to get cap compliant. You're trading guys away, and all you're going to get in return is crap because you're trying to stay under the cap. So I think that's why this LTIR loophole is there.
Well, and that's why I don't want to give him too much flack for not getting a deal done with Jonathan Marchessault, because I'm sorry, what fucking money did they have to even sign him? Did they want to keep him there? I'm absolutely certain they did. I 100% believe it. He's one of the best players that's ever. His number will probably be hanging in the rafters in Vegas someday after time heals the wound of him not re-signing there. But they don't have any money. The salary cap is $88 million. They're at $91 million in cap hit right now. So they don't even have room for the guys they have. They don't have room for guys that were expired. So Although
Right.
they bring in Tanner Pearson on a PTO, which is hilarious because I'm like, I'm sorry, what money are you going to use to sign him if he makes the team?
Well,
But
that's exactly it. But it's like at the same time, you sign Jonathan Marshall. So okay, so now you'd be just like Washington, 10 million over the cap. Now what do you do? Now you're really screwed.
yeah,
With Washington, they're 10 million over the cap and they're not even good. So
yeah. Yeah, that's
like,
well, our Eastern Conference preview will be fun because there's a lot of teams that are shit shows over there.
yeah, that's gonna be fun.
That's next week for those of you who missed that, by the way.
That'll be fun. Again, that's a
That'll be
show
a
that's
fun
gonna be in
show.
person. We're gonna have a good time with that.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Maybe we'll drink some beers, see if we can get a sponsor for next week's episode. That'd be fun. All right. So let's move on from Vegas because I think we both know, again, the only thing looming for them is what do they do about the cap situation? Who is the one that takes the seat so they can get this team cap compliant? But we know they're good enough to win. Yep. Now let's get into the teams that missed the playoffs. What are we at on time right now? We're about 55 minutes in. This is going to be a long show. All right, so we'll start with the teams that missed the playoffs. First up on that list is the St. Louis Blues. 6 points out of the playoffs, record of 43, 33, and 6. That was good for 92 points. Again, missed the playoffs by 6 points. Last year was kind of a mess for the Blues. Just nothing really. They couldn't really put together any sustained success for a long period of time. They stumbled into the finish line 5-3-2 to close it out. A very ho-hum way to end the season. Now they come into this year. I think they're a little bit better. They bring in the Joseph brothers, which I think is cool that they have two Josephs on the same team. They bring in Ryan Suter, who does not play for the Dallas Stars anymore.
No.
Okay, I thought I lost you for a sec. I had to check back on my stream. I'm like, did I lose you, or did you just not acknowledge my not
Nope,
that funny joke?
No. I heard it. It took me a second to process it.
So for the Blues, the thing that's really going to suck is that before a couple weeks ago they announced Torrey Krug will miss the entire season. He, I believe, is going to have ankle surgery he's having. It's an injury that was bothering him all of last year, and so now he's made the difficult decision to have the surgery now, so he'll miss all of this season. So that sucks for St. Louis, but you look at the decor, they bring in Philip Broberg. Again, they signed him to that offer sheet at $4.5 million. He signs it. They bring him in now after Edmonton doesn't match. That decor is going to have Justin Falk, Colton Parayko, Nick Leddy, Scott Perunovich, who I think is another really good player. I'm really excited to see what he continues to do. He's only 26. I think he can be one of the premier defenders in this league. They have a good core there. If they can have a good Jordan Binnington season, I think they'll be okay. I would not be surprised to see them find a way to sneak into the playoffs. Joel Hofer is really good too. This is his last year making $775,000, and then he's an RFA, which he'll be getting a big raise. But you look up front: Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Radek Faksa, Brandon Saad, Pavel Buchnevich, Braden Shen, Alexei Toropchenko, who's another guy I think they can really get another gear out of him. Jake Neighbors. They have a lot of really good pieces here. I think, and again, losing Torrey Krug sucks for them, but I think based on everything they have on their roster, if they get, like I said, if they get a good Jordan Binnington season, I really would not be surprised to see them in the playoffs. This team isn't a bad team on paper. I kind of like the roster construction. I think they just as a group need to gel better, and I don't think there's much holding them back. They almost made the playoffs last year. They just you got to get the goaltending, and your special teams has to be better than it was.
I mean, my big thing is you need a different goaltender on that team. Not to the magnitude that Colorado needs goaltending, but Jordan Binnington's not it, man. He's just not. He won the Stanley Cup for them in 2019. He's been irrelevant in the league ever since. It's time to move on. Time to go somewhere else, give other guys a shot. He's not the answer. And
I don't think he's the same elite level he was when they won the cup, but I think he's good enough to be a 1A, 1B kind of goalie. I think they're really hoping Joel Hofer breaks out this year and takes over that number one spot. I think Jordan Binnington in a 1A, 1B system, not a traditional backup where he plays 20 games, but if they can get Joel Hofer to play 45 games or 47 games and have Binnington play the other 35 or whatever, I think that's kind of what they're going to be hoping for this year. And I don't think that's unrealistic to expect that either. I think Joel Hofer has showed he can do that in this league. He's not a bad goalie. He just needs to continue to flourish.
See, I personally believe Jordan Binnington, and not necessarily with St. Louis, but it would be better suited as a traditional backup for somebody. That's just my opinion. I just don't see it with him, man. there's too many flaws with him. He's also got a really shitty attitude that I don't like. So maybe that's why
he's not the most sportsman of the NHL players. That's for damn sure. But
which I don't get. But
yeah, I don't know why. I'm like, man, he comes in the league his first year and wins a cup. I can't believe I'd be in way better spirits than that. But maybe it's because the next team that we're going to talk about has the nicest goalie in the history of the universe. But for the St. Louis Blues, again, I think there's a lot of pieces there. I would certainly not be surprised to see them have a good season if they can get the goaltending, and again, if they can really get Joel Hofer to take that next step. The next team on the list is the Minnesota Wild.
Okay, I was like, gee, I wonder who he's talking about.
Yeah, well, when I said the nicest goalie on the planet, you had to know
you're not wrong.
But I thought I was going to say that's not even a slight exaggeration.
I thought you were being sarcastic, so I was like, who's he talking about? But no, he really is the nicest.
No, it is Marc-Andre Fleury. He's the nicest goalie in the history of the league. He's also probably one of the best goalies of all time.
He might just be the nicest guy in the league too.
On the planet, yes. Oh,
yeah,
same thing. All right. So let's take a look at the Wild. The Wild last year fell far below expectations for the team. And I don't just say this as a fan, but they come off a pretty good year in 2022, 2023, where they make the playoffs. They get bounced to run one to Dallas. But again, Kaprizov had a great year that year. Boldy had a really good year, kind of really started to flourish, signed that big contract. Eriksson Ek had a good year. This season for the Wild, injuries were the story of it. They lose their captain, Jared Spurgeon. He missed all but like 10 games this season. They had a stretch where they didn't have Brodin or Kaprizov or Eriksson Ek for like 7 games right between the start of January, or right at the start of January, that really kind of killed their momentum in the standings, and they never really recovered from that. Injuries played a big part of this team's struggles this year. Unfortunately, as a fan of the team, I don't know if they did enough to address the team in the offseason to make that better. Now, again, a full season of Jared Spurgeon probably goes a long way to help the team out. But a couple of things the Wild did do well. First of all, they re-signed Brock Faber to a long-term deal, 8 years, and he's making $8.5 million against the cap. I think in the next 5 years, Brock Faber is going to be one of the best defensemen in the league. So I think that's a great signing for the Wild. But now this year, they're going to probably pair him in tandem with Jake Middleton, and they're going to run Spurgeon and Brodin together, which I think if that works long-term will be great. Those are 2 of the best shutdown defenders in the league, and I think pairing them together would be really fun. Up front, obviously, the story's the same there. They have their big 3, Eriksson Ek, Boldy, and Kaprizov. That's one of the most fun trios in the league to watch, but I question if they're going to keep them together. I know in training camp they've been running Zuccarello with Kaprizov and Hartman to try and reunite that line and get that chemistry back. And I think they really want to put Eriksson Ek in kind of a checking line shutdown role like they did with the Grief line many years ago. I think they want to put him with like Trennan and Foligno and see if they can bring one of those big brutality lines back to the team. Because if there's one thing the Wild lacked last year, other than healthy players, it was fight in their game. They got pushed around a lot. They got knocked down a lot. I mean, literally last season, it came down to Marco Rossi standing up for Kirill Kaprizov and dropping the gloves with Caden Gooley because nobody else was there to help out. And so I think this team needs a little more fight in its game, and I don't know that they got better enough to make the playoffs, but I do like some of the changes they made. I don't think it'll be enough. I am looking forward to seeing what Jesper Wallstedt does in his first full year in the league. It sounds like the Wild are going to try and run 3 goalies at a few times this year to get Wallstedt some looks in the NHL.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask real quick, just before I forget, I'm looking at them on Puckpedia right now. Who are they still retaining? They're still retaining Parise, right?
They still, for those of you familiar, the Wild are still paying those god-awful Parise and Suter buyouts. This is the final year that they have. So right now on each of those buyouts, they're paying $7.3 million against the cap. This is the final year they have to do that. And then for the next 3 years, they'll pay $833,000 per player on those deals. And then they're done completely. The problem for the Wild is they're going to get about almost $15 million in cap space back after this season, but they're going to lose 8.5 of it right away because Brock Faber's extension kicks in at the end of the season. The other thing for the Wild is, again, they'll have about $7 million-ish in cap space to play with at the end of the season once Faber's extension kicks in. But Marco Rossi's an RFA at the end of this year. He's going to likely be due for a big payday if he continues to develop the way he is. Marc-Andre Fleury is retiring at the end of this year. And so they'll get $2.5 million back from him as well. But again, they have other RFAs. Murat Husnudinov is going to be an RFA for them. Marcus Johansson, who Bill Guerin seems to have a man crush on, is a UFA. They're probably going to need some money to keep him.
They're want to be careful. I don't know if you want that to get back to Bill Guerin. We know.
Yeah, Bill Guerin. Yeah, Bill Guerin will beat the tar out of me. We were at opening night last season for the Wild, and I was about 10 feet from him. I'm like, that is a big motherfucker.
He is a big dude, man.
Again, the Wild Bill loves his guys, though. That's why he paid Hartman as well as he did, and he paid Foligno and Zuccarello as well as he did, and he gave them these deals. Gave Freddie Gaudreau a 5-year deal that I can't stand. That's just donating $2 million to the salary cap. So we'll see. So the Wild are going to have some deals to make. And again, the Rossi contract probably, if he has another good season like this, he's probably going to eat up about $5-6 million of that cap space. Declan Chisholm's going to be a UFA at the end of this season. Probably another guy, if he has another decent season like he did this past year, probably another guy who's going to see a few $1 million go his way. So the Wild are going to get all this money back, but it's going to go right back into the guys that are in their lineup, which ultimately I think will not leave them much wiggle room to bring in free agents. So while originally my thought was that when these god awful deals were done, or these buyouts were done, the Wild could really go dip into the free agent market. I don't know that they're even going to have that option. They bring in Yakov Trenin, $3.5 million for the next 4 years. Pretty good player. He's only 27, big physical body, but you're paying Ryan Hartman and Marcus Foligno $4 million to be okay. They got to be way fucking better if they're making that kind of money. And not to alert Wild fans, but Kirill Kaprizov is a free agent at the end of next season. He's already making $9 million and is based on what
anywhere.
That guy, he's going to be due to be making about $13 million by the time we get to end of next season with 2 salary cap raises. He's going to be looking at getting a pretty penny. So a lot of the money that they're going to get with the cap going up and these buyouts ending is pretty much already spoken for because of the Foligno and the Hartman and the Gaudreau deals. So we'll see what happens. I mean, time will only tell, but the Wild are going to be in a really tough spot for the next few years. Bill Guerin's going to have to work some magic if he's going to get them out of this and make this team competitive, because they certainly have the pieces to do it, but it's nowhere near enough to make them a Stanley Cup contender.
Well, I was just going to say he's definitely got his work cut out for him. And it might be a different story if they currently had some room if they had some cap space to work with, but they don't. I mean, their heads are literally against the ceiling. They are
756,000.
Yep. 756,000 under the cap right now. I mean, that's right there. So that they're those buyouts will be done, but that's not going to do them any favors essentially, except keep them from going over with all these extensions they're going to need.
Yes, so, which is good. I mean, the other side of this too is that these players that they're going to have to resign, Rossi, Declan Chisholm, these guys can develop, and Murat Husnudinov to a lesser extent, and Liam Ugrin if he breaks out, and they have a lot of good prospects. You can alleviate a lot of that if these guys break out, but if they don't, now you have all this money and tied up in guys that aren't that great. Ryan Hartman, if he's not at the top of his game, is not worth $4 million. Marcus Foligno being on LTIR or not playing half the season is not good at $4 million. Matt Zuccarello at 4.1 is not good if he's not on Kaprizov's line and producing with him. There's just a lot of question marks. And I think a lot of the Wild success is going to hinge on the prospects they have. They just draft Zeev Buium. They get him a steal at number 13. They have Riley Heidt, who they've been really high on since they drafted him. I believe it was last year or the year before. I can't remember now. They're really high on him, and they're hoping for the best from him. They already have Liam Ugrin and Murat Husnudinov on the roster. They're hoping to get a lot out of them. If those guys develop, great. If not, then what? Then you're back to square one with all these contracts that suck. And again, if you're trying to convince Kirill Kaprizov to stay in Minnesota, he very much loves playing in Minnesota, but is that enough to keep him here if the team's going to suck the entirety of his career? I mean, not everybody is Mike Trout with the Los Angeles Angels. Not every guy's just going to be happy losing every year. I don't know how Mike Trout does that, but he does. He's a better person than me.
Well, not going to disagree with you about that last part.
Yeah. So I don't know. I know obviously as a fan of a team, you always want to hold your own team to a higher standard, but just looking at this from a hockey fan's perspective, it's like, it really is tough to see where this team, if these prospects they have don't develop, and if these young guys they already got playing on the roster don't develop, you're likely going to lose your superstar player, the best player that's ever played for this team already. He's already better than Gaborik. He's already better than Koivu. His attitude's certainly better than Koivu's. He's better than Bouchard. He's better than any of the guys you think of that have played for the Wild that were any level of elite. He's already eons better than all of them. And so if you're going to try and keep a guy like that here, the team's just got to be better. And right now, I just don't think it's at that level yet. And it sucks to say I love the Wild, but that's just is what it is.
Thank you all for coming to Brian's TED Talk. Moving on. Where are we going, Brian?
Yeah, hang on, let my blood pressure come down. So we just talked about the Wild having no cap space. Now we'll go move on to the Calgary Flames, who have 19.9, almost $20 million in cap space. So the problem with the Flames is the team is not so good. So the Flames finished last season 38, 39, and 5. That's good for 81 points. It was 11th in the conference. A really bad season for the Flames last year. The good news for the Flames is, I believe they're working on a new arena for them now to replace the Saddledome. So that's cool. That'll be really cool. The Flames have badly needed a new barn for a long time. That obviously doesn't necessarily affect the on-ice product, but from a fan experience point of view, while the Flames go through this transitional period of figuring out what the hell to do with this team, I think it's cool that they're going to be looking forward to getting a new building. I know they have some prospects that they're really counting on to bring up. And I had their prospects pulled up in front of me here, and I just lost like I lost like half the tabs I had open. What the hell happened? So, all right. So for the Flames, last year kind of blew up in their face. And after the Panthers won the Stanley Cup this past season, that Huberdeau trade really just continues to look worse and worse for them.
And I love it.
Not necessarily that Jonathan Huberdeau is a bad player, but the fact that he's 31 and he's making $10.5 million the next 4 seasons.
Well, and I mean, again, he's making. They signed into a huge deal or extended him to a huge deal right away. Matthew Tkachuk had instant success in Florida. So I don't know. I mean, as a Panthers fan, you still miss Huberdeau. And you do feel bad for him, but at the same time, there was after that trade happened, there was bad blood between him and the Panthers front office, and he kind of wrote the team off. So at the same time, good luck the rest of the way.
Now he's making a lot of dollars for not much going on in Calgary, but Calgary still has some pieces there. I don't think they're going to be very good this year, but they have the money. They could turn this thing around quickly. If they get some more, if they get some development out of their prospects, they could turn this around quickly with all that cap space. They have Kadri again. They have Huberdeau. Andrei Kuzmenko's there. He's making 5.5, but he's up at the end of this year. So you got to decide, do you keep him at 28 years old? Do you really see him as part of the future? Blake Coleman's got 3 more years left. Michael Backlund's already 35. Holy cow. Anthony Mantha's UFA at the end of this coming season, making $3.5 million. I think he just signed a 1-year deal there, though. I don't think that was traded over because he was with Vegas, was he not?
Yes, he was.
The one really bright spot for the Flames, and they have since extended him because of his great season. Yegor Sharangovich comes over from New Jersey, has an outstanding year for the Flames, earns himself, I believe it was a 5 or 6 year deal worth $5.75 million per year. Great deal for him, great deal for the team. That's going to give them a lot of flexibility if he continues to play at the level he's at now. Even if he peaks here and just stays stagnant, if they can get some development in the coming years, he could be a really good, important part of this group, 4 or 5 years from now if they're competitive again. Holy cow, I can't even say that. They get Ryan Lomberg out of Florida. Again, a guy who's battle tested in the playoffs. That's a guy you want in your locker room, teaching your young guys. If you're not going to be in the playoffs, you want these guys. They always talk about wanting these guys to learn to be pros. That's the kind of guy. That guy's a gym machine. This is a guy you want around your players while they're training and growing, kind of growing into their pro athlete bodies. You don't bring him in to influence a guy like a Huberdeau or maybe that's a bad example because they both played on Florida. But
but
you're not bringing him in to talk with a guy like Kadri, who's already won a cup, or a guy like Kuzmenko or Coleman, or these guys that are later in their careers. You're bringing him in to have a good influence on a younger guy like a Connor Zary or like, Kevin Ball. And even to a lesser extent, Dustin Wolf, because he's a goalie, but yeah, you have younger players. You want guys who are hard workers that earn everything they've got. That's a great move for them. So there are pieces there that can continue to help this team develop. I think Miromanov could potentially be a really good fit with there. We'll see how Jake Bean does as well too. But they got that top pairing of I don't even know if it'll be a top pairing because they're both right shooters, but Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson. If Jake Bean can play well enough, I could see him being a top 4 kind of guy. If Kevin Ball has a really good breakout season here, I could see him being in the top 4 as well. I mean, the Flames have some pieces here where they could eventually do some damage. With the goaltending being Dustin Wolf, who is largely unproven in this league, and Dan Vladar, who could potentially have a good year this year. He's not a bad goalie by any means,
and he has been cleared to start the season for the record.
Has he? I didn't see.
Yes, it's right here on Puckpedia. It's yesterday. He is cleared to start the 24-25 season after undergoing surgery in March.
Well, there you go. So there's pieces here, and this isn't going to be an overnight fix for the Flames, but again, they're getting a new building. Ownership's not going to want to move into this building with a shit team either. They want to move into this building and have a team that's building a ton of momentum towards being good. And again, they have some good players there. Connor Zary, I'm really excited to see what he does. I'm really excited for Dustin Wolf to see if he can take over that net as well. I think he's really, I mean, you see him play when in the minors, but it doesn't always translate to the NHL, but I really think he is capable of doing something great. But I'm really excited for Connor Zary. We'll see what they can get out of Matt Coronado as well. But time will tell. Again, the fix isn't overnight for the Flames, but I would expect them to be a little bit better this year, and I would still expect to see some growth from them as a group. And again, you bring in a guy like Ryan Lomberg, who's now won a Stanley Cup. You have Kadri, who's already won a cup. You have guys here that can teach these younger guys. Sometimes a few years of sucking can really pay off.
Absolutely. I think there's no better,
$20 million in cap space is great too.
Yeah, well, there's that. But I think there's no better example of the sucking paying off than the Florida Panthers. So
yeah,
just throwing that one out there.
Although their road to success was a little different from most. I had to stand up here. My ass is getting sore from sitting in this chair. I'm sitting in a folding chair at a folding table to do all of this.
Well, you're supposed to unfold the chair before you sit in it. So
that's the secret. All right.
The more you know.
Smart guy.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to Seattle Kraken. Boy, talk about no cap space. $4,286 in cap space. The Kraken last year, so the year before, they go out and knock out the defending Stanley Cup champions in round 1. This season, 34, 35, and 13, 81 points. It didn't work out this year. That they kind of had a Cinderella type season a couple years ago. It just wasn't the case for them this year, but they're still a newer team. This is going to be their 4th season now. Yeah. Let's look at the pieces they got. Obviously they got Mandy Beniers on that long contract, $7.1 million a year. He's going to be an outstanding player. He's going to be in this league for years to come. Oh, excuse me. They bring in Chandler Stevenson from Vegas. We talk about guys who have won, and you want to teach your players how to be pros. This is another guy that's got a history of being a good player. He's a Stanley Cup champion now. I think he won the Stanley Cup twice, though. He won in Vegas, and I'm pretty sure he was on the Washington team that beat Vegas in 2018. They have Andrei Burakovsky there still. Again, another guy that's a Stanley Cup champion, but a lot of their success is going to depend, and we keep talking about this, on their prospects. Can they get Eeli Tolvanen to really elevate his game? Now he's starting to enter his prime. Is he going to be an elite player? Is he going to be a middle 6 kind of guy his whole career? Is Shane Wright ever going to become anything? No. They got to find out. Can Ty Cartier take that next step? He's going to be an RFA at the end of this season. I think they're really looking for him to have a big year. Will Borgen on the back end is going to be a UFA at the end of this year. Do you want to keep him long term? He's going to be 28 by the end of the season. Same with Josh Mahura. He's going to be 27. They have Riker Evans, who they're very high on. I saw him play. I'm pretty sure I saw him play against the Admirals when he was in Coachella Valley. But again, another good young prospect. Can he continue to develop and stick with the big club? Their core 4 defenders, I mean, they bring in Brandon Montour, who just won with Florida as well. Yes. But they're 3 guys they already had there: Adam Larson, Jamie Alexiak, and Vince Dunn. Vince Dunn's the youngest of those at 27. Alexiak and Larson are both 31. They're kind of at this crossroads now where there's plenty of pieces here to make this team good, but they have no cap space to work with. And so now the development of the prospects becomes so important. This is where, and again, he's not making much now, but he could be. This is where you want to see a guy like Ty Cartier come out and have a 35-goal season, or Shane Wright come out and have some kind of breakout year, even if it's, let's say it's 65 points, just something. This is where you need those young guys to prove what they are, because you don't have any room to work with as a team. Now you have to make it work. because you don't have money to add pieces. And in net, they're going to be fine. Joey Decord's up at the end of this year. He's making 1.2, but he's already 28. So he's going to be looking to sign a long-term deal for a lot of money. So for the Kraken, this is an extremely important, critical year as far as the history of this franchise is going to go. This is going to kind of determine, I think this is going to determine whether the next 10 years suck or are great for them.
Yeah, overall, I think the product that they've put out thus far on the ice hasn't been anything disappointing, I'll say. One thing I do want to say real quick, too, before I forget, I did see that Vince Dunn is injured right now, so I don't even know if he's going to make it to start the season.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he had last I read it was a few days ago that he had a neck injury or something. So I don't know if he's going to be good to go to start the season.
How did I miss that? He's their best defender. How did I miss that?
I don't know. It might have even been better part of a week ago at this point. I don't know that I saw, but yeah, I think he got injured in practice, if I remember correctly. Let me try and see if I can find something.
Well, it's right now while you dig for that, we're going to get ready to move on here. But yeah, if Vince Dunn's not playing for Seattle, that's a huge blow. I mean, he's their best defender.
Never mind. Here, I'm right here on Puckpedia. I just found something that says this is from the 19th. It said he was scheduled to participate in Friday's on ice session, but that's the most recent update. So
hopefully he's ready for the start of the season. I don't see any notes about him being on LTIR. So whatever it is, it could just be something nagging that he's working to fight off.
Could be.
Let's move on. We're going to talk about the now Utah Hockey Club. Last year, their final season as the Arizona Coyotes, they finished 36-41-5 for 77 points. They actually had a really good start to the season last year, but with the talks of relocation, it kind of sucked the life out of the room. They stumbled into the finish line and were fourth last in the conference. They added a lot of really good pieces this year. They bring in Mikhail Sergachev. They already had Sean Dursey there. They bring in John Marino. They bolster that back end big time. I really like Sergachev for them. You need a guy that can run your power play. I didn't really think Dursey was that guy. I don't know what they have in Yusuf Alamaki and Michael Kesselring yet. It's not Ian Cole, that's for damn sure. But I think Mikhail Sergachev, he's a great mobile defenseman. He had so many good years in Tampa Bay. And so I think that's a perfect fit to plug in on the blue line there. They have up front, I'm still not sure how I feel about them up front because, I mean, outside of Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz, I'm not especially blown away by any of their guys. Michelli's a pretty good young player. Can they continue to get more out of him? Barrett Hayton, I like a lot, actually. But Nick Bukestad is okay. Kevin Stenlund was actually pretty good for Florida. Jack McBain, I'm on. Liam O'Brien will be a good locker room guy. The big two for them, everybody knows, and they actually just extended Dylan Gunther, I think it was yesterday or the day before, for a long-term deal worth $7.1 million per year. I think it's the next 8 years. So that's a big one for them. But the two looming ones are going to be what happens in the development of Logan Cooley and Josh Doan. Those two are going to be cornerstone players of that franchise for a long time if they develop, but are they going to? Because if they don't, they're going to be a middle of the pack team. So they have time here. This isn't something where you need to win right away. They're going to be in a situation now that they've moved and they're in Utah. They're going to be in a situation like Seattle was, where you have the excitement of the new team, bring them in, make the games exciting to watch. If you don't necessarily win or make the playoffs, it's not the end of the world, but at the same time, if they get good goaltending, Connor Ingram has shown at plenty of times that he can be a very good goalie, and I like Karel Vejmelka's performances from time to time too. They don't be surprised if they sneak in that final wild card spot, because they're not great. But again, they started last season with a worse roster and started off very well. This group is largely improved, I would say, even though they don't blow me away in any particular fashion. But I would not be surprised to see them with a truly full building behind them and a city that's excited to see them play. I would not be surprised to see them sneak into the playoffs.
I'm going to take it a step further. I fully expect that they're going to make the playoffs, and I'll even go one step further to say that they even win a round. So, I'm saying it right now. Hey, don't knock my predictions, man. I said the Panthers were going to win the cup last year, and they did. So,
yeah, guy picks the best looking team in the league to win the Stanley Cup, and it was surprising they won.
No, Yeah, I don't know. I picked that. What was that, like January or something? I picked
It
that
was
shit.
February, or no, it was March. It was at the trade deadline, wasn't it?
You're all right, Griffin.
Yeah, I know I am.
All right. Well,
But for
regardless.
Utah again, I feel like they're in a spot where they're playing with house money. The roster is largely improved, and again, they're in a new building, new city with new fans. I think it all kind of adds up well, even if it's not the best year for them. It'll give them time to acclimate themselves to the city and the fans, and I think it'll only get better from here for them. I really think Dylan Gunther is going to continue to develop. I mean, he better now that he signed the long deal, but I think Logan Cooley, this kid's like a diamond in the rough. I really think, I mean, they were pretty high on him when he came into the league, but I really think when this 3-4 years from now, we're to talk about this kid, he's going to be one of the best players in the league.
I agree, and I think this is actually a team that people are going to want to watch this year. I mean, outside of their own fan base.
Yeah, I'll definitely put on some games. That's for sure. They'll be cool to watch.
I'm excited to see how this whole thing develops. I'm really excited for it. It's a fresh start. It kind of gives you everybody the chance to put the Arizona curse behind you. I think this is great. I'm really excited for them. I'm not a fan, obviously, but I'm excited to see where this goes for them, and I'm excited to watch this organization develop.
All right. Next up, the Anaheim Ducks. We got the last three teams in the conference here, and boy, are all three of them rough. The Ducks last year, 27 wins, 55 total losses, 59 points, an absolute nightmare season for the Ducks. It's been a rough few years for Anaheim. It's certainly not like the Getzlaf, Perry, Solani days.
No, now it's the Gudas days.
Yeah, now it's the Gudas days. The Ducks name Radko Gudas their captain this offseason.
Captain Violence.
They're in a really funky spot right now. It still seems like nobody knows what the real future is for Trevor Zegras, if he's going to be good, if he's going to stay there, is he not? It really seems like nobody knows what the fuck is happening with John Gibson. Their goaltending, it seems like Lucas Dostal is going to be a good goalie, but again, can they get out from under John Gibson's contract, because Dostal's an RFA at the end of the season, and if he has another year this year like he did last year, he's going to be due for a big pay raise. They have Urho Vakanainen, that's a RFA at the end of the season as well. Cam Fowler is going to be 33 by the end of this year. Their captain Gudas is going to be 35 by the end of this year, and Brian Dumoulin. Very frail team on defense. I know they're expecting big things out of Olen Zellweger and Pavel Mintyukov, but nothing's a guarantee in this league. Up front, there's a little more promise. If Zegras can continue to develop and flourish, then maybe there's something there. Troy Terry's a good player. Frank Vetrano's good, but he's 30 and he's going to be a UFA at the end of the season. Obviously, they have Cutter Gauthier and Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish, who are probably three of their brightest young stars. I know Beckett Seneca, who they just took third overall, much to his own surprise, but is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks with an injury. So there's a lot of promising young talent up front there, but the back end is my big concern for Anaheim. It really sucks that Seneca is going to be out to start the season. I was really looking forward to seeing a kid who was blown away that he went third overall. I was excited to see how it translated to his performance on the ice.
Dude, I can't believe Frank Vetrano's 30 already.
Yeah, I know. Insane. It feels like yesterday he was 20 years old. But dude, for the Ducks, again, this could be a year where we could see Leo Carlson. I mean, Leo Carlson, I thought had a really good year last year, but Mason McTavish is only 21. Cutter Gauthier is 20. We could really see those three start to make a name for themselves this year. The Ducks are still in really a big limbo period. Even if those three young guys have a good season, I really think the Ducks are probably going to still be near the bottom of the conference this year. I mean, it stinks because I think they're a really fun team to watch. I like their arena looks really cool. I'm one of the few people that likes their funky goal horn they have.
Oh yeah, you're on your own for that.
Yeah, I love their commentary crew. Like, they're a fun team to watch, but boy, is it! I don't think I've watched more than 3 Ducks games in each of the last probably 5 seasons.
I have watched, at least I can tell you this for a fact, in the last 2 seasons, unless they were playing the Bruins or the Panthers, I have not watched a single Anaheim Ducks game.
Oh, there you go. Well, then I won't let you give some input on this then.
Fine by me. if nothing else, they got a sick new logo. So
they do. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I talk about burying the lead like we did with Ottinger.
Yeah.
Their new logo is outstanding.
Yeah, dude, I
everybody
love
loves the
everything
Mighty
about
Ducks logo. I think the uniforms, it's too much orange. I think the pants and helmets should be black, but everybody seems to love the orange. Everybody seems to love the Mighty Ducks logo. So you know what? If nothing else, they got that going. Again, there's some bright young stars. So even if it's a rough season for them this year, there's still a lot of growth that can be done here, and it's not the end of the world. They have how much cap space they have? They have $21 million in cap space, and half of the contracts on their roster are expiring this year. Plus, it seems like they want to shed John Gibson's contract. So really, the Ducks can be in a spot where in the next 5 years, you never know. I mean, really, the next 3 years, they could shed a lot of bad deals and all of a sudden have one of the most competitive rosters in the league. And I hope so. It's a great arena when the Ducks are good, and it's maybe not as hardcore a market as some other ones are, like the Canadian ones are. When the teams are bad, there's not as many fans at these Ducks games. But when they went on those runs in the early 2010s, man, that was a fun building to watch during the playoffs. So I hope they can get back there in the next couple of years, but I really don't think we're close to it yet.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Like you said, this is you make a few good small moves, but at the end of the day, they're still going to be at the bottom of the league, honestly. So it is what it is. We'll see. I'm not a Ducks fan, so it has zero effect on me.
All right. Next up, the Chicago Blackhawks last season, 23-53-6.
They got Connor Bedard.
They have Bedard. Well, we'll talk about him in a bit. 52 points in the standings, kind of what we expected last year, especially given when Bedard got injured. Just a nightmare season for I don't want to say a nightmare season because it was what we expected. It's tough when you lose that many games, regardless of what your expectations are. It's not fun to go out and get your shit kicked in every night, but they bring in some great pieces. I am, and I know I say this all the time, but I'm always about when you're developing a team that's not good and you have a lot of prospects, you need to bring in guys that can teach them how to be pros and learn to work out properly and take care of their bodies so they can create some longevity in this league and learn how to be a better player. The Blackhawks probably are doing this better than any organization right now. The roster largely is not that great. Obviously, they have Connor Bedard, who just won the Calder Trophy. They bring in Tyler Bertuzzi. They still have Taylor Hall there. They bring back Teuvo Teravainen. Nick Foligno is named the captain. They bring in Ilya Mikheyev as well. They still have Phil Kurashev, who's young and they're trying to develop. They bring in Pat Maroon, which I think will be an underrated, really good player. Lucas Reichel's only 22, so there's a chance for him to develop. On the back end is kind of still where I'm not sure with the Hawks yet because I don't see any vast improvement there. They bring in TJ Brody and Alec Martinez, but they have Alex Vlasic, Connor Murphy, and Seth Jones who are already there. And Kevin Korchinski is another name that they're really looking to get a ton out of. But outside of him, I'm not sold on them on the defense corps, but this is still a group that's still so early in its building cycle that you kind of want to take most of it with a grain of salt anyways. In the goaltending, they have Peter Mrazek and Laurent Brossoit, who are both signed for the next 2 seasons. Brossoit is a pretty good goalie. Mrazek, it depends on what day of the week it is. Yeah. But for the Blackhawks, I think continuing, I mean, they get another high draft pick. I think they picked 4th this year because I think they lost all 3 lotteries, which I didn't mind seeing. But for the Blackhawks, this year is going to kind of be like last year. It's just teaching the young kids to play. Bedard's going to be a good player. They're thinking Korchinski is going to continue to develop. You hope you get more out of Reichel and Kurashev, and you just kind of go from there. I mean, the Hawks have they have $6.5 million in cap space. I thought they had like $10 million, but
6.6 to be specific.
But again, they have a lot of deals that are expiring this year. Andreas Athanasiou is done after this year at 4.25. I wouldn't bring him back if I were them. Ryan Donato's done after this year. Maybe if you want him for depth. Pat Maroon, who knows if he retires after this year. It just depends. Craig Smith, probably much of the same. Alec Martinez will be 38 after this year, and he's expiring. I would assume with 3 Stanley Cups, Alec Martinez is probably done after this year.
I mean, well, what else does he have left to prove?
Yeah, you've won 3 cups. You've done it with 2 different teams. You're just playing out you got a nice $4 million paycheck coming this year. Other than that,
Yeah.
But they're in a position much like Anaheim where you'll have a lot of extra money to spend. You have all these, you have a couple of bright young stars that you're hoping continue to flourish. There could be a quick turnaround here, but I don't think it starts this year for the Hawks. I think we find the Hawks right at the bottom of the conference again after this season.
Yeah, I'm not expecting much change here, but one thing I do want to emphasize is them making Nick Foligno the captain. You could argue that if there was someone who should be the captain of the National Hockey League, as far as a leadership standpoint, it would be Nick Foligno in my book. I'm sorry. I think he's an incredible leader on and off the ice. He's such a
Austin Matthews. Sorry, I just wanted to get you riled up.
Yeah, well, no, I'm not trying to get my blood pressure high on this show. But I think Nick Foligno is just an amazing person on and off the ice. I loved him when he was in Boston. And I mean, he was already captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Everybody loved him. Everybody loves Nick Foligno. So I think that was the perfect move. And now I don't remember. I need you to confirm this for me. Was it you or was it somebody else that told me Seth Jones last year requested?
It was me. So I forgot what the exact storyline was, but it was something to the effect of before last season, Seth Jones told the Blackhawks that he wanted to be the captain and that they said they wanted to leave it vacant for that last season because they wanted to decide on their own. Well, now he gets to go up there and watch somebody else be captain. So I don't know.
Look, man.
Now he's still an alternate captain, and there's nothing wrong with that. Things can change over time. I mean, playing with Nick Foligno probably helps Seth Jones see that. I mean, Nick Foligno's captain material. He's already been a captain. He's much more tenured in the league, but I don't know. It's again, I think the Hawks will be near the bottom of the league, but I think you're right. They definitely made the right choice in making Nick Foligno their captain.
I think Nick Foligno is also an excellent example of the level of professionalism that has to come with being a professional athlete too, not just in hockey, but in any sport. I think he represents everything of what it means to be a professional athlete. So I think that was the right choice for them. And we'll see how Tyler Bertuzzi does in Chicago. That's a weird that one was weird to me. I thought
that'll be fun because it's some of the guys on their team. If they're trying to teach these kids to have some grit in their game, that's the kind of guy you want to do it because Bertuzzi's a guy who's going to go out there and stir the pot and be a
he's a pest.
But he's going to be the same guy that when your team draws a penalty, he's going to go out on the power play and put one in the net. And he's going to show these guys that you can play the game physical and still be effective.
Oh, he's a good net front presence too. He's very, in that sense, him and Matthew Tkachuk are similar to each other in their style of play. Although I think Bertuzzi's a lot grittier than Tkachuk.
Yeah, where Bertuzzi gets all of his grit and toughness from, Tkachuk has that on the skill side. He's a tough player, but he's all. I mean, Tkachuk's mostly like I would say 80-20 split with skill.
Tkachuk will get under your skin, but Bertuzzi will get under your skin and then kick your ass. So
Tkachuk will get under your skin and then skate to the bench, and then when he gets the power play, he'll put one in your net and then flip you off on the way to the bench for the flyby.
And then Bertuzzi will slash your tires on his way home.
That's an older joke for those of you who are newer listeners to this show. We don't think
Tyler Bertuzzi is actually.
Yeah, we don't think he's actually going to cut your car's tires.
No.
Final team on the list, and boy, what a year it was for the San Jose
Sharks. Yes, sir.
You wouldn't believe that they played 82 games, given that they won only 19 of them and lost a total of 63. 54-9 for the Sharks last year, 47 total points in the standings, two separate loss streaks of over 10 games, including back-to-back games where they lost, giving up 10 goals in a row, and where they 0-11 to start the season before finally beating the Flyers, which that's hilarious that it happened to Philly.
Yeah.
The Sharks, by a mile, the worst goal differential in the league this year at minus 150, 181 goals for, 331 goals against. Pretty much anything that can go wrong in a season went wrong for the Sharks this year. They already weren't a great team, but again, you get Couture for a grand total of one game, and he's been dealing with injuries for years now. Nothing went right for the Sharks this year. The only thing that worked right for them is at the end of the season, they win the draft lottery. They go out and get Macklin Celebrini. Now him and Will Smith are going to be playing with the team this year on the big club. They still have Eklund. They still have Zetterlund. They have a lot of really good young talent coming through the system. But again, another team that's really far away. What are your thoughts on the Sharks?
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that their projected cap hit, I should say, is $77.5 million. And I just want to know, are they just standing on the street corner handing that money out to random strangers? Because who the hell are they paying? Like,
well,
who's taking all that money?
Well, right now Tyler Toffoli's getting $6 million a season.
Okay.
Mikhail Granlund, sorry, $5 million. They just brought in Alex Wenberg at $5 million. Barclay Goodrow, $3.3 million, and then everybody else under that, like Cunnin and Clean Costin, are all under $3 million. Logan Couture, if he's healthy, is $8 million, but he's actually, that's the other thing. His cap hit is not showing LTIR right now, I don't think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's on our. So his $8 million is still against the cap. On the back end, Mark-Edward Vlasic, who is still in the league, $7 million against the cap, and then Jake Wallman, $3.4 million against the cap. Cody Ceci and Mario Ferraro, 3.25, and it kind of tails off from there. And net, Vitek Vanacek, $3.4 million. Mackenzie Blackwood, 2.5 roughly. And then, of course, the big fish, they bring in Yaroslav Askarov and extend him for 2 more years.
I think he's going to be a good fit for that team. I think that's exactly where he belongs right now. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I think that's good for him because he's guaranteed playing time.
Yeah, he can develop with this young team again. They have got a lot of big talent come through the system between Celebrini, Smith, and Eklund. You bring in Askarov too. And this team could be really dangerous in about 5-6 years. I can really see this team being a thorn in people's sides. I wonder if we're going to get to the point with Logan Couture where it's time for him to call it quits. I think between the last 2 seasons, he's not even played 10 games.
Well, he's expected back for I think their second game of the season. So
yeah, again, he's not on LTIR, so he's projected to return, but he came back last season and got injured right away. So nothing's guaranteed. And the same is going to be with Landeskog in Colorado. How healthy is he after essentially not playing it? Well, Landeskog literally, but for Couture, essentially not playing the last 2 seasons.
Well, I just want to reiterate, I do think a big thing here for the Sharks and for Askey is Askey. So
yeah, that's going to be a big one. And seeing him play as much as I did in Milwaukee, for Sharks fans, the biggest thing you're going to notice with this guy, and this will get better as he develops, and he's going to learn under probably Mackenzie Blackwood, I think, is the guy you keep there long term to pair with Askarov. But his handling of the puck outside of his crease is really bad. His decision making on chasing pucks that are dumped in, and his decision making on breaking the puck out when he's the one carrying it behind the net, his judgment's been very poor, and it cost him a lot of goals against in the AHL. Just between playing the puck poorly and turning it over, or playing it well, but then the puck gets turned over by someone else and he's still not back in the net. It's just his decision making is going to be his biggest one. He's as athletic a goaltender as there is. He's a right-handed catching goalie, which is kind of different because most goalies catch with their left. So he's a unique goalie. He's extremely athletic, but he's in a spot in his career where he really needs to tighten down a lot of the facets of his game, because you can't be gung-ho. Not everybody can be Dominic Hasek and Marc-Andre Fleury flying all over the crease to make saves, because it just doesn't work. It's not typically a winning formula, except with very few exceptions.
Yeah, and it's good that he went to San Jose, because he's going to get the playing time that not only does he need, but I think he rightfully deserves. And that just wasn't going to happen in Nashville. And that's not anything negative against Nashville. There wasn't the space for him there. That's what it comes down to.
For me personally, I still think he could use another year in the AHL, but maybe not my decision to make. But again, for him, he's athletic enough to be a goalie. He's big. I don't think long-term there will be an issue, but he's got it. His decision-making and his puck handling outside of the crease is simply got to get better. Otherwise, he's going to find himself on the wrong end of a lot of highlight reels, and not good ones.
Well, not for nothing, San Jose looked like an AHL team last season. So
yeah, and again, they bring in some guys with experience to hopefully level the ship. You don't expect them to make the playoffs, but you certainly expect some level of improvement. Tyler Toffoli's a proven winner when he was with LA. Barclay Goodrow is a good veteran player. Alex Wenberg's a good veteran. Guys that can help right the ship, so the roster isn't a bunch of kids running around against, grown men that have years of experience in the league. You hopefully can right the ship a little bit more, but I'm thinking the Sharks are probably second to last or last in the conference still this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I say second to last. I never want to predict who's actually going to finish last, just because you never know who's going to surprise you. But I say second or third to last. It's a good fit for the San Jose Sharks.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we'll see what happens.
Before we go, a couple things I want to do. You said you don't want to predict who's going to be last in the division or the conferences. Before we go, I do want to run down all 16 of these teams again, and I just want to hear your thoughts if you think they're making the playoffs or not. Before we do that, why don't we hear a word from our sponsor and hear a little bit about the Warrior for Life Fund?
All right. This is where I get to shine. First up, if you're a hockey player or just someone who likes to fool around with hockey stuff on your property and you're looking for something to use off ice, you can't use a real hockey puck on the concrete or in your garage. You're going to want something like this. And this is a product from the company called Xenopucks, and they make off-ice alternative. Holy crap. Try and say that fast. Off-ice alternative pucks. And their claim to fame is they operate just like a regular puck would on the ice, but not on the ice. These work on any off-ice surface that you can think of. Concrete, asphalt, dirt and turf, if for whatever weird reason you want to use it on there. And you can use it in your house too if you want. Carpet, hardwood, tile, all that stuff. I've tried it on just about all of that, minus the turf and the dirt, because there's no reason to. It glides like butter. It's insane. It's the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck. It's not made out of rubber, but it's great if you're just trying to practice your stick handling or work on your shots or just your general performance overall. This is a great alternative because we all know ice time's not always an option. So if you're interested in getting one of these, whether it's for you or your kids, head over to Xenopucks.com right now. Get yourself one of these, check out their merchandise, and follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks, XENOPUCKS. And as always, shout out to the guys at Xenopucks for sponsoring this show. That being said, it's time to talk about the Warrior for Life Fund. And that just reminded me, I was going to bring my challenge coin that Bob Pizzini gave me, but I forgot to bring that upstairs. So anyway, back to the Warrior for Life Fund. If you haven't heard us talk about them before, we've had a couple reps from their organization on the show, Bob Pizzini being the big one. And then we had a couple NHL players, former NHL players that work hand in hand with them now too, Mark Mowers and Andrew Alberts. The Warrior for Life Fund are a military nonprofit that work to help active duty and military veterans transition back to civilian life, whether it's getting out of the military or coming back from deployment. And they do that through the game of hockey. Warrior for Life has their own hockey team. They partner with the Boston Bruins Alumni Association and the NHL, and they get these games going so these guys can get out on the ice. And it's good to help build relationships outside the military, because one of the biggest things in the military is camaraderie. And so that's what they're aiming to do, is build that camaraderie and still help people make that mental transition back to some form of a normal life post-military. And then, again, they do that through hockey games. And I personally, I don't see how there's anything better in the world than that. But that being said, it's not something that they're able to do for free. It's an organization that runs off of donations. So if it's something that sounds interesting to you and it's something you want to donate to, head over to warriorforlifefund.org right now and make a donation or see how you can help.
Wonderful. Love it. Love it. I was, as you finished saying that, I was just finished eating an apple.
Oh, that's okay.
I was trying to finish chewing before I talked with my mouth full. That was lunch for today. I've been so damn busy this morning.
There is one more thing I have to shout out.
Go for it.
I've been meaning to do it since last season. But if you notice before every episode of this show,
some friend you are.
Yeah, there's what's known as a static intro for the show. You hear the music and the voice introducing the show, and that voice is the voice of Tyler Suling, who was kind enough to provide his vocals for an intro for this show. He's a good friend of ours, but he's also an avid listener of the show. He listens to every episode. He's a good friend. He's a good person. I've been meaning to shout him out on here for quite some time, but I'm doing it right now. So Tyler, thanks for listening to the show, man. Thanks for being a good friend. And thanks for giving us an intro, because your voice sounds a lot better than ours. So we appreciate it.
Yes, we do. And as always, thanks to our friends in the Triple Jets for providing the excuse me, the outro music for our show.
Absolutely. And as
So
far as the
they're
intro
good
music
friends
to
of
our
mine.
show, as far as the outro music to our show, that is just
Intro.
it is. Or I'm sorry, the intro music to our show, that is just intro music that anybody can use. So
We're not exactly made of money around here.
no, we're not, but that's okay. That is not our objective.
Correct. Yeah, our objective is just to hope you listen to us talk about nonsense for a couple hours a week.
But if for those of you that have stuck it out for this whole episode, God bless you, man.
Yeah, I do want to say if you're still listening and you're a Sharks fan, I am sorry we made you wait till the end of the episode just to dunk on the Sharks.
Yeah,
but that's all right. If you're a Sharks fan and you made it to the end of this episode, we love you for listening. If you're anybody that's made it to the end of this episode, we love you for listening this long. Before we go, Andrew, I want to just run down here and I want to give both our thoughts about each of these 16 teams we talked about and say whether or not we think they'll be in the playoffs. So,
all right.
First of all, who do you think finishes with the best record in the conference if you absolutely had to pick?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to have to say two here because I can't pick just one of them. I'm going to have to say it's either going to be Edmonton or Vancouver.
I'm going to say Colorado.
Really?
Yep. I think Colorado we've seen is built for the regular season. I mean, we've seen them win, but I think they are going to finish the best record in the conference. I think Dallas and Winnipeg take a step back. I know Nashville's going to take a step up. I think the Oilers and Canucks are still going to be very good. But I think there's still some question marks surrounding Vancouver with Demko's health. And the Oilers, we'll see. The Oilers, I could see the Oilers doing it too, but I'm going to take Colorado to finish the best record in the conference. Now, as far as these 16 teams go, Dallas, playoffs, yes or no? I think we can both agree yes. Winnipeg?
I'm going to say yes.
Now, do you think wild card or top three in the division?
That I'm going to say wild card. I don't think they're top three quality right now.
All right. I'm going to take them in the top three. I'm going to say Dallas will be the team that falls into the wild card. I'm going to take Nashville above them, but we'll get to Nashville. Vancouver, yes or no? Yeah. And wild, you think they're going to win the conference, so you're thinking top three for sure. I'm probably up there with you. They're a really good team. Colorado, definitely yes for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Top three.
If they get a goalie, yes. If not, no.
All right, Edmonton. That's a yes for both of us. I can just say there's no way they're a wild card.
Yeah, they're going to be out for blood this season. That's why I'm saying they're up there to win the conference too. So
Nashville, yes.
I'm going to say yes in a wild card spot.
I'm going to say yes, and I think they're going to bump one of Dallas or Winnipeg out of the way.
All right,
or both. Who knows? LA, yes or no?
No.
And okay, you think no? I'm gonna. Oh boy, it's tough to say because the teams that missed last year. I'm gonna say no for LA too. Actually,
yeah.
I think there's a couple teams breathing down their neck that could catch them. So I'm gonna say no for LA.
Yeah, so am I.
All right, Vegas, yes or no?
I'll say yeah.
I'm gonna say yes for Vegas too, and I'm gonna say they're gonna move into that number one of the top three spots in the Pacific. I think the Central's taking 5 of the playoff spots again this year. I think it'll be Vancouver, Edmonton, and Vegas, and then the other 5 spots in the Western Conference will be Central teams. So Vegas, are you taking? I assume you're going to take them as top 3 then.
I'm going to say top 1 or number 1 wild card spot.
All right. Well, if they're number 1 wild card spot, which Pacific Division team is going to be above them? As you said, LA's missing the playoffs, so that would mean one of Seattle, Anaheim, or San Jose or Calgary's got to pass them.
All right, fine.
Okay, you had me confused for a sec. I'm going to say Vegas in that top 3. So that leaves one vacant playoff spot for a wild card. To make this easier, which of the following teams do you think makes the playoffs since you have LA missing? St. Louis, Minnesota, Calgary, Seattle, Utah, Anaheim, Chicago, San Jose.
Man. I'm going to say I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say it, and I hope to God I'm right. I'm going to say the Minnesota Wild.
All right. I would like that too. I mean, obviously, but if they can stay healthy, I honestly, had they been healthy all of this last season, they probably would have made it in. They weren't unbearably bad, and they had a lot of good stretches. I'm going to say St. Louis takes the final spot, and I'm going to say Minnesota's the first team outside of the playoff bubble. I think LA.
It's going to be close.
I think St. Louis moves up and LA falls out, and Minnesota is right there behind them. I think St. Louis improved more. I don't think they're completely the better team. I just think the Minnesota goaltending situation is so volatile right now. They're going to be playing a guy who's only got 2 NHL games of experience for a good chunk of the season. They're going to be going to 3 goalies a lot. I would not be surprised, and I certainly wouldn't complain if Minnesota moves in, but it's right now, unless they have a hot start to the season, I got to say St. Louis takes that final wild card spot. And then Minnesota, LA, and the other 6 teams that missed are all looking in. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle have some improvement. I think if Joey Daccord has a good season too, I could see them really flying back up and knocking off LA, and then it's St. Louis, Minnesota, and LA on the outside too.
I was actually going to say, if not Minnesota, I was going to pick Seattle. So, but I kind of
Seattle had a rough finish to the year. I don't think they're as bad as their record indicated either.
No, I don't either. And I think there will be a bounce back this year for sure.
Utah, I think, also move up in the standings from where Arizona was last year. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they'll be really close. As far as Calgary, Anaheim, Chicago, and San Jose go, there's just a lot to improve on still, and the other teams in the conference are still too good.
And I do want to point out that I did say earlier that I think Utah is going to make the playoffs and win around. I don't truly believe that, but I want to clarify, I don't think they're going to be a bad team this year. That's just something I want to point out.
Arizona, until like February, Arizona wasn't even horrible, or it was either January or February whenever they started that god-awful losing streak. But before that, they were right in the mix, and I think at some points they were in a playoff spot. So
they were at one point. They were in a playoff spot.
There's definitely a chance there, and these predictions are all speculation, and we could be completely wrong. But yeah, I think I think that there's a chance there for Utah to really make a name for themselves this season.
We will find out, and it's going to be a lot of speculating until then. So that was a long video or long podcast. Long video. It was a long podcast. I think this is the longest one we've ever done. Close to our one we did with Bob Pizzini. Yeah, damn close.
And for the coming weeks, here's what we have. Next week we'll be in person. I'll be sitting next to Andrew in that room he's in.
If you're
lucky.
Huh.
We're going to do our Eastern Conference preview. We're going to do it kind of the same format as this. We're going to start at the top of the conference and work our way down. The following week, we're going to kind of do like a night before Christmas style thing where the preseason will be all in the books. We'll have to look forward to the regular season, and we'll do somewhat of a preview. We'll see who made it out of training camp and preseason without injuries, and we'll kind of talk about any news that's come up. The weeks following that are still up in the air because the 2 weeks after the season starts will be in the middle of when I'm moving. So stay tuned to our social media for updates on that. We're going to try and do shows the best we can. We're also going to try and get Ben Polacco to come back on the show to do an episode. And if I can't make it, he may even potentially have to fill in for me if he can make it on here. Otherwise, we may have to postpone a show. I have no doubt in my mind that you and Ben could do this just fine without me. So
we'll be fine.
Too worried. But it's just right now my life's so busy. My wife and I have been packing up our house like crazy. We're trying to sell it. It's been a process. So we will for sure have our Eastern Conference preview next week because I'll be at your house, so it won't be an issue. And then we'll do our final thoughts before the season starts in 2 weeks, and then it'll be kind of hit or miss. So follow us on Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast and at Brian Fresh Ice. We're on Facebook, Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast. Get your questions into us. If you're watching on YouTube, leave them in the comments or send them in to Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast at gmail.com.
Absolutely. I think one thing that everybody should know is that I personally am working on a pretty pretty good guest list for this season for this show behind the scenes. I'm also in contact and working on some stuff behind the scenes with the Warrior for Life Fund as well regarding this show. So make sure you guys are following us on social media to stay up to date with everything. And I'm looking forward to sharing plans that we have as the season goes on. And that's all I got. Brian, you got anything?
That's pretty much it. Again, thanks to Xenopucks for sponsoring our show, and thanks for the Warrior for Life Fund for all they continue to do for our country's vets. If anybody is interested or knows somebody that's interested in doing a partnership or sponsorship with our show, again, have them reach out to us, freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com. We're looking for a second sponsor to partner up with this season as well. Again, we are only partnered with Xenopucks right now. We just shout out Warrior for Life on Goodwill because they're a great organization. So if anybody is interested in any kind of paid sponsorships or partnerships with us this season, please reach out and we will get something set up before the puck drops on, October 10th or October 9th, I think is technically opening night.
I think it's the 8th.
I know they're doing the Global Series games overseas before the rest of the teams start, but I think the actual opening night thing that they're going to do on ESPN, I think is so either the
opening
8th,
night
9th,
is
or 10th.
October 8th, Florida Panthers versus Boston Bruins.
Okay, there we go. So we're not too far away from the regular season, but we got some more teams to preview next week. I got to go continue cleaning my house. You got to get this thing uploaded, and we will see you guys in 7 days.
That sounds good. Take care. Comb your hair.